Alrighty, so it's that time of the year again, whereas the regular season is about to come to an end, and while the playoff races is definitely at its peak, we're also starting to see teams that are getting eliminated from the playoffs. And in the last match week, we saw the first two teams getting eliminated in the playoffs. That is the Colorado Rapids and Toronto FC. And usually around this time, I will be begin doing the moving forward series, talk about these teams that got eliminated in the playoffs. And as it is the case in year past, I'll go try my best to go chronological order of when exactly they got eliminated in the playoffs. So that's why today we're going to start off with the Colorado Rapids, and later on I'll talk about Toronto FC that was also eliminated in playoff contention. Now, what's kind of interesting is that while everybody's talking about the playoff races and also the seeding right now for those teams that is in the playoff position, not a lot of people are talking about the wooden spoon race. I mean, the wooden spoon race is definitely very interesting in the way that, right now there's two teams that is battling for the wooden spoon. That is the Colorado Rapids and Toronto FC. And if you want to kind of do it in a sarcastic way, I mean, both of these teams would either like to avoid the wooden spoon or wants to have the wooden spoon because they'll get a first round draft pick heading into next season. But I believe right now TFC does have the wooden spoon spot, mainly because they have played one more game than what the Colorado Rapids has at 29 games. But that being said, just like TFC, they've only got 4 wins this season. The Colorado Rapids with a 4-10-15 record, and just like TFC, they're currently sitting 22 points. That is the Colorado Rapids. Now, in terms of goal score, only 21 goals scored this season. That is by far the worst, not only in the Western Conference, but the worst in the league. We talked about the problem with the Rapids in terms of scoring goals, and yeah, it's not surprised they haven't scored a lot of goals this season. They've also given up a lot of goals too. 45 goals that they have given up, which by the way, that is actually not the worst in the Western Conference. There's actually one team that has a worse goal allow record, but still, it is the second worst at 45, and the goal differential is minus 24, which I believe it's also not the worst. I think TFC the well, actually no, I think both them and TFC is currently tied with the worst goal differential of minus 24. As I mentioned, they're currently last in the Western Conference, but in terms of the Saportio standings, I think they're just second to dead last because TFC does have play one more game, and I think that's kind the tiebreaker. Their current head coach is Chris Little, who of course is an interim head coach taking charge of Robin Fraser that was fired just a couple of weeks ago. And the chief soccer officer is Pedro Smith, who's been there since 2015, and he's been under a lot of heat lately. I mean, there's been a lot of people that demand him to be fired from this team because he hasn't really done a good job. I mean, will say that as much as I know he's trying his best to do uh do do a good job in terms of keeping this team not being as bad as they are this season. I mean, we all know what was the main culprit of this team of how why they are very bad. They're just not getting the investment from even higher up, and that Pedro Smith he just kind of almost like used as a puppet in a way where I think the only reason why he hasn't been fired is because he's just basically saying the right words. He's trying to basically say these things that maybe things are gonna change, and it didn't really quite happen. And this is where I mentioned before. It feels like it's more words than action in terms of what the Colorado Rapids are trying to send the message to their fans and especially their supporter group. Now, the top goal scorer for this team, again, unsurprisingly, when you have a team that is worse in the league in terms of scoring, you're not going to have the top goal scorer scoring a lot of goals. And in fact, the top goal scorer right now is Cole Bassett. And in fact, he probably would be at 2 goals like all of these players if it wasn't for him scoring in the last 2 games. And that really in the last 2 games, he started to kind of going back to the Cole Bassett that we saw during when he eventually got his move to Europe. And obviously that didn't quite worked out. But he currently have 4 goals, followed by a couple of players with 2 goals. Got Lalas Abubakar, Michael Barrios, who's no longer with the Rapids. He's with the Galaxy right now. Kevin Cabral and Diego Rubio with 2 goals. Now, the top assist leader, despite the fact that this team does struggle to score goals, they actually do have a top assist leader with a good amount of assists. Connor Rowan currently leads the team with 8 assists. And I got to say, Connor Rowan, he has done a really good job taking over that role that Jack Price lost. I mean, when we saw Jack Price lost this season, we thought that was going to be a death sentence for this Rapids team, and in some way, it kind of is. Though I doubt that even if Jack Price was still uh, playing for this team and he didn't he didn't torn his ACL early in the season, it would have made a difference. But Con Ronan has done a great job in terms of stepping that role with 8 assists, followed by Diego Rubio with 4 assists, Michael Barrios, who of course no longer with the team with 2 assists, Calvin Harris with two assists, and Ralph Priso with 2 assists. Now, looking at the last 5 seasons for the Colorado Rapids, so obviously this is a season where they really bottom out with a 4-10-15 record. This is by far the worst season for the Rapids has ever had. Even worse than when they had those dark days back in 2017, 2018 when they weren't a very good team with 22 points. But prior to last season, it was a mediocre 10th place finish with 11-10-13 record and finished with 43 points. But then we saw what happened in 2021. 2021 was kind of an example where sometime that Moneyball approach the Oakland A's kind of use in baseball, and then eventually they made it into a movie and also written in a book. Well, the Colorado Rapids basically did exactly that in 2021. They finished first in the Western Conference, the first time ever they have ever finished top spot in the Western Conference with 17-10-7 record and finished with a franchise record 61 points. And just like the Moneyball approach that we see with the A's in the MLB, as much as that team did some incredible thing, when it comes to playoff time, they didn't really do much. They got eliminated by the Portland Timbers in the playoffs, but still, I think that was kind of a great inspiration and just kind of a reminder that hey, if in a league where I know no spending is kind of something that is a requirement almost now, because of how much teams have spent money in terms of bringing in players and trying to reinvest in the squad. It doesn't always mean that you have to spend so much money. You don't have to be a top spender. In fact, as we'll talk about in the next moving forward series, talk about TFC, how they're kind of the complete polar opposite in terms of the spending that the Colorado Rapids had, and we'll talk about how that also doesn't always guarantee the fact that you're gonna be successful in this league. But it's mostly about how you spend those money, and do you sign these players and spend these money wisely in terms of them can reinvest in your squad. And I think the Rapids did probably the best in 2021, picking up a lot of these kind of proven MLS player for a low amount of money and build themselves in a really good competitive team. Now in 2020, they finished fifth in the Western Conference with an 8-4-6 record. That was of course the COVID shortened year, and that I think was the first year that Robin Fraser took over. And this is where again Robin Fraser got a lot of respect from a lot of Colorado Rapids fan, because this is a team that for a long time was a bottom feeder, but the fact that he's been able to guide this team multiple times to playoff appearance is something nothing short of a miracle. But in 2019, they did finish ninth place with 12-6-16 record with 42 points. The attendance, 15,459 is the average attendance this season, which is good for only 27th in the league. This is not a big surprise. Colorado has always struggled in terms of attendance, and again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Sporting Goods Park is nowhere near Denver. I mean, I've been there before. I think I've been there once, and I can tell you how hard it is to get to that stadium. It's not an easy place to get to, and basically, if you don't actually own a car, it's kind of impossible to get to the place. I think if I remember when I went there to that stadium, I had to take Uber to get there, and then I actually bumped into a Rapids fan after the game, and he actually showed me that you can actually take the bus to get back to a train station near the stadium. But still, it's very inconvenient in terms of public transportation, and the fact that it's kind of built out of in the middle of nowhere just kind of shows you why, yeah, the attendance has been bad, and a combination of the Colorado Rapids hasn't done a really good job in terms of their marketing, because multiple time when I was there in Denver, I don't think a lot of people know who the Colorado Rapids is, or I didn't even see any Colorado Rapids gear whatsoever even for sale in those sports shops, and not to mention the team has been bad for the last couple of years. Now, in terms of the MVP of this team, it has to be Connor Rowland. I mean, again, Connor Rowland, he's pretty much the bright only the bright spot of this team. He has really stepped up in a big way, where it's almost like they didn't really lose too much production from Jack Price. I mean, I know Jack Price is still going to be important for this team, and I think once he does come back, he'll definitely take that role. But don't be surprised. It'll be interesting to see with both of them playing together. They might have a very solid foundation in that midfield. And we talk about this Rapids team that needs to go through a deep build heading into this season. There are some pieces I think there are kind of set, and there are at least some foundation that they can build on to get themselves back to contention. Now, in terms of disappointment, again, any time when we talk about teams that have bad record, I talk about MVP being not easy to choose, but I pick Colin Ronan mainly because he really had a good season this year. But in terms of disappointment, it is a lot. There's a lot to choose. I mean, there is a lot of underachievers in this Colorado Rapids team that I could easily put as a big disappointment. But I gotta say, the biggest disappointment has to be Max. I mean, I think, and you probably know why. Even if you're a if you're not a Colorado Rapids fan, because not only the fact that I think they spent him as a DP player, which again, if that is the case, that is gonna go down as probably one of the biggest bust designated player signing I've ever seen. And the Rapids have had some bad DP signing. But getting Max, a guy that I thought he definitely did show some potential, but then this season happened where he didn't really perform very well, and then we get to the sports betting allegation that he put in, that he basically did some illegal betting that was going on, and even did some match fixing down his home country in Brazil. I mean, out of all those crazy allegations that we see, I mean, it's no surprise. You got to say he is probably the most disappointing player, and that it's not surprise eventually they did cut ties with him because of all this situation that he's was dealing with. Now, in terms of young players to watch, I mean, there's really not a lot of young players I can say in this team that it could be interest to watch. Though I will say that when you look at the MLS Next Pro team, the Colorado Rapids do, they're actually one of the best team in the MLS Next Pro. In fact, I think they finished in first place, and there's definitely a lot of good young players coming out of that Rapids Academy. But I'm gonna pick Sidney Tavares because I think that was a good signing for them. I think he can definitely blossom, and he definitely showed some flashes that brilliance doing his first couple of games with the Rapids, and that I think this is definitely a guy that will definitely be watched. But don't be surprised, we will see in the future where once some of those MLS Next Pro player does get promoted into the senior team, just like what we saw with Darren Yappy playing very well with the Rapids 2 team last season, getting promoted. Don't be surprised, they of course are going to be also players to watch. Though I will say this, Darren Yappy, I talk about disappointment. Man, this has been a disappointing season for Darren Yappy. A guy that there was a lot of hypes around that he can do some good thing for this team. He maybe be the number 9 that the Rapids has been looking for a long time. And yeah, he's been pretty much relegated to bench duty warmer, to a point where I think he's now back with the Rapids 2 team. So I can understand why maybe this Rapids 2 team has been very well in MLS Next Pro, because Darren Yappy was just a stud in MLS Next Pro last season. Now, what went right for this Rapids team? Again, when we get to the talk about these bomb feeder, it's really kind of almost you just kind of nitpicking in terms of some of the things that went right. Colin Ronan, again, great replacement for the injured Jack Price here. And then I think the other thing that many people don't talk about is the fullbacks for the Rapids. I mean, I feel like there's another position the Rapids are set in terms of this deep rebuild. It's gonna be the fullbacks. I think Keegan Rosenberry and Andrew Gutman has been really good for the team, especially Andrew Gutman. I mean, the signing. I feel like this is a very Colorado Rapids signings, where this is a team that still do make some signings in terms of getting some well proven MLS player to join their team. And that I was kind of surprised the fact that the Rapids were able to get Andrew Gutman for such a cheap amount of money, because with the way that he's been doing, especially I think his career really translate when he was with Atlanta, and that especially he's kind of now becoming more of an attacking fullback, which is something that was not his DNA during his time with FC Cincinnati, and even during his time with the Red Bulls. I mean, his transition has really unlock some good potential that he has, and that again, I think he could be a really good asset for this Rapids team in terms of attacking fullbacks. Because now in the modern game, you expect your fullbacks to also provide the attack, especially in the wing area, and that's exactly what Andrew Gutman can do. He's definitely one of the better wing fullbacks that we've seen in this league. Now, what went wrong for this team? Oh boy, there was a lot that went wrong for the Colorado Rapids. I mean, as I mentioned, they're battling with TFC as the worst team in the league. That's obviously a big telling sign that things definitely went terribly wrong when you're battling for the wooden spoon this year. And then, of course, I think the biggest thing that went wrong is the fact that I know that they've been trying this money ball approach, but one thing about this money ball approach is that you absolutely have to make sure all these players can perform not only at their expectation, but maybe punching above their weight. And that's kind of what we saw in the 2021 season, where when they finished first, a lot of those players were punching above their weight, and that I can understand why there's a lot of people saying that there could be a regression because of it, and we saw it in the 2022 season. But man, this year it was the complete opposite in terms of what we saw in 2021. Whereas those players were punching above their weight, this season, it's been just all these players that we knew that this Rapids team don't have a very talented roster because of the fact that they spent probably the least amount out of any team, it's baffling the fact that they still have those DP spot open and not willingly to spend, but just most of them just kind of underperform. So when you have a team that is already not have a lot of talent, already kind of below the talent gap in terms of the squad that you compare to other MLS team around the league, and then you on top of that had those players underperform. Yeah, it's no surprise why they're dead last in the standings, and why for most games in the last couple of months. I mean, it's almost like whenever you play against the Colorado Rapids, I mean, it's almost like a blessing for a lot of these teams, because you know that you're gonna get easy 3 points against this team. And then last but not least, again, they can't score and they can't defend. A lot of that has to do with just no real attacking weapons for this team. And then on the defensive department, man, there's been some regression. I mean, Lawless Abuka, remember how he was a guy that was a decent def- the defender with the Columbus Crew, and was really even a decent defender a couple of years with the Rapids. Man, he has regressed badly. And then the Andres Maxo signings that they had bring a a, a decent center back. Man, he has not lived up to any of that expectation. He's kind of joining one of those many signings that the Rapids has had this offseason that turns out to be a huge bust. And then moving forward for this Rapids team, again, as many people have said, it seems like they're going for a deep rebuild. But the first thing they need to do is definitely finding a head coach. And honestly, I will say that that is probably harder than in terms of the deep rebuild that they're going to go. Because with this deep rebuild, I think they're still going to follow their philosophy of kind of this money ball approach. Well, the thing is, can you get a head coach that can buy into the system? And this is also where I said back when I did that video talk about the firing of Robin Fraser. This is a really tough situation that the Rapids find themselves in. And as much as I want to say that there could be some encouraging sign in the future that a head coach might take this role, I can't see it. Like, I don't think this is a job that anybody wants to take this as a good way for them to continue their coaching career. And that because of how the Rapids have operated, it's I feel like Robin Fraser was probably the best that they could get. Like, honestly, I think Robin Fraser is a guy that it's kind of sad that he eventually she got fired for the team, which is why I also think that he's not going to be out of that job a lot. I think with all these teams that don't have head coach right now, he's probably going to be the top target because of what he has done to this Rapids team, despite on a shoestring budget. And I just don't see if there's any other head coach that has that similar ability to do so. And if they do hire a head coach, and it turns out to be a yes man kind of head coach to the ownership and the front office, it's not really going to change the luck of this Rapids team of getting themselves back to competitiveness. And then, of course, the deep rebuild. Again, they have some foundation, but man, they got a lot of work to do. I mean, starting with the goalkeeping position. I mean, Marko Ilic and William Yarbrough are not really considered to be starting quality MLS goalkeeper anymore. The defense needs to be reshaped, especially in the center back position. The midfield, I mentioned with the likes of Conroy and Jack Price eventually coming back, I think that could be a good foundation. But on the attack, they absolutely need to reshape that attack. Like and I do have a feeling that they could do so. And that, again, this is where I get to the next point where I feel like they're going to keep the money ball approach. They're going to keep that approach where they're going to go out to sign some of these these free agent, and there are some good free agents and players that is going to be exiting the market, or by the time when we have the end of the season roster, there's going to be some good players that's going to be released to a point where I can see the Rapids can definitely pick them up. But the big question about that is, will they able to keep up with the market price? Because again, this team, they don't spend a lot of money, and that what I'm worried about this Rapids team is because the market for those players are starting to get high, and especially if they do want to do trades, which they have done before in terms of bringing these proven MLS player. They need to make sure they stick with the market prices. They cannot not just go penny pinching and maybe play hardball in terms of these teams that they want to trade a player, which we kind of seen that before with this Rapids team, and that if they are able to do so, then this team can definitely get back to where they were in 2021. Again, I can understand what is this team trying to do, and for a team that this team, I think as long as if the Cronkies are still taking charge of this team, they're never gonna span right around where you see some of these top spanner is gonna be. So the best approach for them is just kind of do what the Moneyball approach is, trying to maybe get some diamond in the rough, or getting these proven MLS player on the cheap, and hope that they can get to a point where they could look like what they were in the 2021, or even during the 2020 season when they were doing well, and that they can get themselves back into playoff contention. I mean, again, I've said this in the beginning of the season, where in the beginning of the season, the reason why I remember when I made my prediction of the Colorado Rapids, why I wasn't very optimistic about this season, is because when you look at the pieces that they added, I mean, it's very kind of underwhelming, and that they need to have another season where all these players maybe need to punch above their weight to get themselves in the playoffs. Though what I did not imagine is that all those players that were supposed to punch above their weight to get this team to the playoffs not only didn't do that, but they underperformed badly. And again, that's kind of the main flaw of the Moneyball approach that this Rapids team are trying to do. So yeah, overall, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this team, and what do you think is going to happen this offseason? I have a feeling this is going to be a very busy team in the offseason. I mean, they have to, with the way that it's been what a disastrous season that they have. There's no way they can do nothing in this offseason and expect things are going to be different heading into next season. But let me know in the comments below what you think of this video, and if you're a Colorado Rapids fan, what do you think is your MVP, your disappointment, your young player to watch? What do you think went right, went wrong, and most importantly, moving forward, how is this offseason going to look heading into the 2024 season? But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.